Hello folks, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Sian and I am an independent writer and artist. And this year I am writing my first book while also trying to build a slower, more creative life for myself. Last month I talked about my decision to try and step away from living my life at a pace that wasn't really that sustainable for me, and why I wanted 2026 to feel slower and a little bit more focused, especially on my creative work. Today I want to talk about what that actually looks like in practice and how I'm approaching writing my first book in terms of goals and rhythms and routines and all that sort of stuff. So let's get started. Writing and goal setting. I've found that a lot of advice around writing or any projects really tends to really focus on setting goals, using things like word counts or timers or schedules. It's something I've tried in the past. I've given myself very clear targets and on paper they were all reasonable. But what I noticed was the more specific and the more measurable those targets and goals became, the more anxious I actually felt around the work itself. And that anxiety made me procrastinate, and then I ended up doing less work, which was the exact opposite of what I was trying to achieve. So this year I've changed things up a little and I've deliberately really simplified them. So I now have two goals. One, finish a draft of my book by the end of the year. And two, to do something, literally anything, towards my creative projects each day. Everything else is intentionally really loose and flexible. I've totally let go of the idea of having like little micro check-ins or quarterly goals or anything like that. And I'm trying to measure success more by the process rather than the outputs. So am I doing the work every day? Am I enjoying it? Like, is something happening? Do we have a bit of a flow, a bit of momentum, rather than I've written 500 words today? So far, I find this has reduced a lot of the frustration I had with myself and has improved my relationship with my writing and my work. I feel that it's less forced and I'm less miserable because I'm not sitting shouting at myself to do it all the time. There are still days where I get anxious and I'm like, will I actually finish this by the end of the year? But I'm trying to learn to just trust the process a little bit more, go with the flow and actually enjoy what I'm doing, which feels like the most important thing to me right now.
Writing and routines.
So those are my goals, but what about routines? How am I planning to get there? Similarly to goals, routines and I have had kind of a complicated relationship over the years. I like the idea of them. Their predictability is comforting for me, but my life isn't terribly predictable. I don't really have a fixed schedule. My work patterns change, the people I live with don't keep the same hours, and there are days where my capacity is very different than what I would have expected, which in a lot of ways I find is really good for my mood. I like novelty, I like being able to change things up, but it really doesn't lend itself to having a very fixed routine. When I've tried to force my writing into a rigid daily structure, it's usually ended with me being very frustrated. So I'm trying a more flexible approach this year, which is to not have a very fixed routine, but instead to have a couple of consistent anchor points that I visit and do at any point during the day. So for example, I know I want to journal each day at some point as documentation for future books I'm writing. At the moment, that tends to be in the morning, but I don't have it fixed that it has to be done then, and I can do it at any point. Similarly, I try to write at some point each day, but I don't fix when that is. It could be on my lunch break, it could be on the train, it could be after work in the evenings. But as long as I do something at some point during the day, that's good enough for me at the moment.
Conclusion.
So although a lot of this goes against that kind of typical advice around writing and productivity and all that sort of thing, it does seem to be working a little bit better for me. I'm crossing my fingers as I say it so I don't jinx myself. It feels gentler and most importantly more sustainable for me. I don't know how the rest of the year will pan out, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to both meet my creative and writing goals whilst also having a more enjoyable, less pressurized experience of actually doing the work. But I'll keep checking in with you guys and update you on how it goes. And if you've made it to the end, here is your bonus pig picture of the lovely Aslan. Isn't he just so cute? Thank you so much for watching and take care. Bye!